Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today, this is going to be a very advanced and long video. Hopefully you guys learn a lot from this video. We're going to be talking about going high ground, but no, it's not just going to be your basic checklist of make sure you have a pick off and, you know, make sure you have Aegis. It's going to be more in depth than that. I'm going to be talking about matchups, heroes that you have, and timings. How do all of these things affect whether or not you should go high ground? We're going to look at 3 different game examples, so a couple of different heroes, because it really changes when you go high ground. If you just assume every single game you just run it up, you're going to lose. In fact, if you watch your average pub, that's exactly what happens. People will be like, we're ahead. Let's run it down, boys. And then they go high ground, and then they lose. And so hopefully this video will help you avoid that. But without further ado, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and of course, I know I say it every single video, but really, if you have not subbed to the GameLeap website and you're not sure why you can't get to the next level, I have videos on the website that are even going to help you understand why you're getting stuck, what mental blocks you have, what in-game blocks you have, whatever it is, it's going to help you get to the next level. I really do believe in it, and that's why I make videos for it every single day. Alright, getting into our first example, let's take a look at the team comp. We have a Lina, a Razor, a Mars, a Bane, and a Willow. Now, is this a good high ground team? The answer, probably not. Okay, why? Number 1, Razor, until he gets Ags, is not a good siege hero, which we'll talk about in a second. Lina, while it is a ranged hero and can go Dragonlance in the attempt to siege, in fact, funny enough, he's even taking out his Dragonlance as he goes high ground, so that should be a tip in and of itself. They don't have a great way to avoid just getting chain stunned, right? Because what's gonna happen is Deuce is gonna stand here, auto attack the person who goes high ground with a Scotty, which is a hard counter to the ranged cores they have, right? The Lina and the Razor, and then they're gonna get potentially chain stunned by a Pango, which they don't have great save for. They have Bane, but that's mediocre at best. And so essentially there's not a good way for them to go high ground without getting chain stunned. So what they'll have to do this game to go high ground is catch the enemy team off guard based on a numbers advantage. And so when you guys are watching pro streams and you're watching games and you're like, how did they decide to go high ground there? Sometimes, yes, it's just some idiot going high ground for no reason and then they're griefing, but let's assume it's a little bit better than that. Look at what the Mars does here. Lina, well, first of all, Lina shoves in the wave. Let's see what she does next. Goes to the left. Lina knows Mars is gonna go. So why does she go to the left? She's trying to bait the enemy team into thinking that they're not gonna go, right? Then they turn around, Medusa walks up, they initiate, okay? Because they know they can't slow siege. They don't want to try to slow siege. Trying to slow siege against a Medusa with like a bunch of long-range heroes that can just cast, you know, long-range spell heroes. They have Impale, they have Ignite, they have Pango, most importantly, is brutal to go high ground against because of the disarms and the potential chain stun threat, and so they have to force it quick. So that's what they try to do. Now, unfortunately for them, it's still trying to burst a Medusa. I think they nearly do it. He just barely lives. Yeah, so it's a little bit unfortunate because see, as their BKBs are running out, what do? Okay, this is the next tip for this specific clip. BKBs are running out. When you use your BKB duration to try to burst someone going high ground, you almost always, unless you are severely winning the fight, I'm talking about 3 kills to none, which is a skill in and of itself to recognize when you're winning the fight or when you're not. But let's say you do recognize you're winning the fight. Okay, you can kite in even when BKBs are running out. But for the most part, you might be like here, the average player would have the bad instinct to be like, oh my god, they're such wusses. I can't believe that. I can't believe that Medusa was that low and they ran away. It's like, guys, it's because they know they're gonna get chain stunned to oblivion. This guy's no Yules, no Blink, no BKB. If he doesn't run away here, he's screwed. In fact, he gets X now, but he's screwed. In fact, this team is running forward with the Medusa low HP. Why? Because both of these players, these teams, understand the advantage that is high ground. So let's get into that briefly now. What is the advantage of high ground? Why is it so dangerous? It's so dangerous because when you're trying to go high ground, you are fighting into a tower, you're fighting into poor vision, You're fighting into poor vision, you're going up a hill, so naturally you're going to have the vision disadvantage. But most importantly, this is the most important part, what I'm about to say, what most people do not get. It is the fact that the frontliners get to frontline and the backliners get to backline. So as we watch this, just to go back 60 seconds, watch how this engagement goes. Look who gets gone on. It's Medusa. Yes, they intentionally go on Medusa. They thought they could burst her. But nonetheless, this isn't really who you want to go on. They would significantly rather go on a Pango or Medusa in an open area where she can't get saved, right? Where she can't get off her manta easily, where they can easily grip her. You can't really grip her here. Of course you can't. Of course, there's a lion and an ogre and maybe a Kunkka and a Pango who's going to TB back. Of course you can't, right? So because of the fact that they have to go on Medusa, they get to respond with their other heroes, or at least try to. In this case, they double pop BKBs to prevent the response, right? And that's an issue in and of itself. Having to instant pop both your BKBs is actually not even both. All three of your BKBs is not great for most team fights. That is generally a bad thing to do because then you're going to have no way to fight on the back half. And so they have to, right, they have to go on the Medusa. As the fight progresses, yes, okay, the line overcommits, they kill him. Then the next person they go on is a Kunkka. I mean, you can see what happens. They try to rip into this Kunkka. As a result of the fact that they try to rip into the Kunkka, the Pango's able to get a pretty clean roll onto the backline. Now, they do a fantastic job of kiting out here. This really won't happen in your pubs, and that's why in your pubs, 9 times out of 10, guys, here's what I'm gonna recommend. Because I know a lot of people are gonna watch this. They're gonna see this clip. They're gonna hear everything I just said, and they're gonna think to themselves, well, the problem is, in my pubs, we can't synergize a numbers advantage jump like this. We can't kite out our BKB duration. Like, that's not gonna happen. I'll say a couple things to that. Number one, you can be the start of it. If you're playing Lina in this exact scenario, you should kite out, right? Even if it's in your pub and you get put in a similar situation, you should kite out. Even if your team is going in, you should kite out so you don't get team wiped. That's the first thing to understand. That's the first thing you can learn from this video. Okay, the second thing is, yes, it's very, very hard to go high ground. So if you acknowledge that, that's good in and of itself. That's good in and of itself. That is a starting point to your learning. So what should you do instead? Cut waves. Really, there's nothing else I can say. Like, what I'm about to tell you here, guys, please internalize this. As we watch them disengage here, what they're gonna wanna do is shove waves. Their Bane is pinging top. He's like, shove this in, get this in, get farm, get out the waves. In your pubs, if you can't go high ground, if the enemy team is AFK, 4 or 5 heroes on their high ground, you've won the fight. You've won the fight. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, so that means we just can't ever go high ground, so how are we gonna end the game? It's like, no, dude, people are not that good, guys. Okay, they're not that good. In your average pub, you know what's gonna happen? They're gonna leave the base. Okay, you could be showing no one on the map. They could have no information, no clue where you are. 100% chance they could die. They will leave the base anyway. That's when you jump. That's when you look for the pickoff. If you're snowballed enough and you've been pushing in waves and collecting net worth, odds are you can likely solo kill who leaves the base as well. And that's when you can snowball pubs for your team. All right, so next what I want to get into is a game example where instead of last game where there was like an insane amount of high ground defense, this is the complete alternative. There is very little high ground defense from B8 here. We're going to be watching the Terrorblade team Siege, and so there's a couple things to note. Number one, Terrorblade, definitely a very good Siege hero. Illusions to give vision of the high ground. You're a very high range hero at Dragonlance, and the enemy team has bad high ground defense, so let's talk about why. So as we watch them approach the high ground, let's talk about the enemy heroes. Okay, first we have Lina. Lina's not a terrible high ground defense hero. She has decent range and a good amount of spam, so she's okay. However, she's very squishy, and the enemy team has a lot of instant disable in the Rubik Lift, the potential Yule setup from Void Spirit, and a Mars Spear. So it's very dangerous for her to walk up first. That would make sense. Then we have Wraith King. Wraith King is not good at defending high ground. I mean, yes, if he's like very far ahead with a Radiance, I mean, he probably shouldn't be defending high ground in that case anyway, but he can be alright if he's ahead. But looking at this game, he's going a right-click build, he's not having a good game, and as a result, he can't defend the high ground. It's a melee hero with very low shove, right? He doesn't have long-range spells, which is going to be the main thing to focus on here. Long-range spells or mispositioning spells. They don't have any of that. Weaver, what does he have to poke? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. What is he? He's going to throw out a swarm. TB is going to kill it in a quarter of a second, and that's going to be it. And finally, we have Bane. Bane is okay. It's not great against TB, though, because he can wake himself up, right? He can wake himself up. So basically, it is a fantastic game to go high ground, even if the enemy team is alive, of course, as long as you have an advantage. So let's watch how this plays out. At first, he's not going to use this meta. He's going to save it for as long as humanly possible. He's going to wait till the enemy team rotates back. Once he gets a little bit of, just like an ounce of info that they've TP back with the Lina nukes, he's going to start to max range siege. In order to really push this idea, he's even going to use his Mantis to give vision of the high ground so that he doesn't have to walk up with this main hero. Notice how the concept here is even against bad high ground defense, you still want to make it as hard as possible for them to cast spells on you, whether or not it's Nightmare, Enfeeble, Lina nukes, it doesn't matter. You want to make it as hard as possible. And with no response, not surprisingly, they get a free tower. After that, he shifts up only a little bit, and his team gets jumped. What does he do? Immediately retreats. But because of the fact that he hasn't overextended, he's able to now take a pretty well-coordinated and situated fight in a very nice area. Right, the enemy team has to jump into him, and as a result, he's able to take a really, really nice fight. Beautiful spear from the Mars there. Good doom onto the Weaver, beautifully done, and they win the fight. And really the key there is the enemy team knows because they don't have high ground defense, they have to jump. So it's the right play. It's the right play from B8, right? It's the correct play. They can't just try to poke at the TB. They don't have heroes to do that. I mean, they could do it a little, but it wouldn't do much, especially against an Aegis. So yeah, fantastic play. They get another pick off on Doom, and now the Bane and the Wraith King can't do anything. So hopefully that makes sense. You got to be able to look at their heroes and say, can they dissuade me from the tower, right? It's a really difficult skill, but hopefully you have a little bit of insight into that now. All right, and for the last clip, we have another Terrorblade clip. However, the main focus of this clip is going to be repositioning and the concept of repositioning. So as we get into this engagement, you're going to notice that Boom Esports here has a Mars. So they have the opportunity to skewer someone back into their team, and they're going to go for that play. This is a very good thing to have anytime you're going high ground. Basically, if you have on your team a Pudge, a Magnus, a Batrider, a Mars, a Tiny, and you have the opportunity to throw someone into your team, that is going to force the enemy team to chase into you and for you to isolate an opponent that you can then burst. So we're going to see them attempt to do this. It doesn't go very well, but it's still a very good example of what to do. So they're going high ground. They have this Scotty timing, Scotty Satanic, no Aegis, but the enemy team, not the best D-push. Legion doesn't do anything. Medusa's very good actually at defending high ground because she's very hard to go on. Grimstroke is mediocre at best. Right, his Q is just, it's not that high damage. It doesn't really stun or anything like that. Weaver, not that good. Void Spirit, okay. And so essentially what we're going to see is similar to last clip. We're going to see a slow siege, and the Mars is going to jump in. Honestly, right here, I don't even think the Mars has to jump in. He definitely doesn't have to jump in. I think he was a little bit afraid that the enemy team was about to set up a burst play onto his Terrorblade, but honestly, they could respond to it pretty easily. They have a lot of very good counter initiation on Boom Esports. So this is a risky play in and of itself. I want you guys to understand that, because a lot of offlane players, mid lane players, initiators, they'll jump in like this. They'll be like, oh, I can catch someone. But what they don't understand, even though that this is a better catch than most players, because a lot of people would just play like Storm and initiate on this guy, and that is horrendous. Like, almost always horrendous, unless it's like a 2v5, you know? And so they go for the play. Unfortunately, Medusa was able to get off Stone Gaze. They were very slow in the execution of the spear into the Fiend's Grip. Otherwise, I honestly think that this would have worked out because she was able to get off Stone Gaze, which is honestly just the grief here because, well, they couldn't burst her. So good play. good isolation, bit of a miscommunication, which is why this is so difficult and dangerous in pubs. If your team isn't on the same page and you dive high ground, you allow the enemy team to stay in position, frontline with the frontliners, backline with the backliners, and just in general take a clean fight. Even if, you know, they're not going to win the fight, take a clean fight. And that's exactly what happens. They end up going on this Medusa. They weren't able to burst her. The Weaver Axe goes off. Very strong combo. Weaver Axe with Medusa. It's just brutally good. And they were able to reset. So that's the risk of jumping high ground. If you mess up your initiation and you don't get a kill right away, more often than not, you're going to lose the fight. And so basically, to wrap up the video, the main thing I'm trying to show you in this clip as that high ground went okay, right? It's not bad. They got a tower. They got a lot of range racks. It's all right, right? Not terrible. Definitely okay. However, Medusa outscales TB in the late game. That's generally how this matchup goes. Not always, but the big thing to consider here is the initiation. Be very careful. Very, very careful. In your pubs, I would say 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, your average player is initiating when they shouldn't. They're going too early, or they're just going when they shouldn't at all. Please understand that most of the time jumping into the enemy team is going to grief you. It's going to put your supports in a position like this, okay? Like this, even though this isn't exactly going high ground, you get the point, right? This is not what you want, and this is what happens in pubs. But all right, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and I'm out. Peace.
And that's all. But remember, before you leave, come on, before you tune out, subscribe to the GameLeap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.